All right, nice job. Nice to hear that. Yeah, well, I think we've got time to kind of go through the whole thing. Actually, I wanted to start just right at the end. Can you just play from
Is it all right if I start?
even from the poco rubato is totally fine, wherever, anywhere on there.
Sorry, that's.
Oh yeah, I don't even need the piano,
okay.
actually. Sorry, I thought I heard something. I was like,
I played it. Right?
Oh, okay, yeah. Well, that's good too. No, great. Yeah, it's really like there's such great command of the piece, and I think you've got a real sense of the style. It's going to be kind of little things. I guess if there's one overall thing, I think a real challenge in this piece is making it hold together. Right? I mean, the first movement. Well, for those of you that might not know, Bartok wanted to write a theme and variations. And the violinist said, well, it really needs to be a concerto. And he said, okay, yeah, I'll write you a concerto. But he wrote a theme and variations. And it's difficult to make it kind of hang together, I think. And there are a few ideas I have about that. I think it's certainly surprising that as specific as all of his metronome markings are, that sometimes the contrasts are a lot less far apart than we think, and I think that sometimes we feel like we need to kind of go on the outer edges of those, and I'm not sure we do. But anyway, the first page had a great feel to that. The opening had a real nice kind of swagger. I think that little thing there that happens before bar 11, I think we don't want it to sound like a triplet going into the E sharp. Yeah, that would just be way too regular for him, right? I think that there's something kind of weird about it, and I think so. Right now, it was coming slightly early, and slightly early, slightly compressed. There was another place where, actually, a lot of people do this, but there's the very typical Bartok figuration of da-dum, ba-dum, da-da on the beat. And sometimes in this piece, you hear this dum, da-dee-da, dee-dee-da. And it's sort of like, well, they're kind of the same thing. Da-dum, ba-be-dum. But you know what I mean? It's not... That's kind of not quite the point of that. Could you actually go from the... Yeah, why don't you just play the beginning one more time? Sorry, you know what? Give 2 bars into that. I think the slur, if you can be really nice and legato, so it's, it's in a way, it's like that, right? And it felt a little bit too kind of gestural, like it was, like you were already in it,
I see. Yeah, just 2 bars.
Yeah, see, you're landing on that last beat. And I think you want to, it's not, I think that takes the fun out of it. I would snap it slightly more rhythmically, precisely. Anyway, one more time from the beginning. No, it's okay. Go on from right there, though. Great. Very minor things that are not hugely important in terms of the overall way you're playing it. I really like it. A couple little things that at 22, so it's interesting that it's a più forte that everyone plays as a meno forte.
Yeah.
I'm not quite sure why. I think that in a way, leave enough in reserve that you don't necessarily have to be più forte in terms of, oh, how am I going to play even louder than I was there? But that there's something to it that is slightly more, it's more forward with the tempo, it's more forward with the expression, it's more forward with the kind of intensity to it there. And let's see. I'd like to hear a little bit more of the ease in that. Like you're doing a really nice job of voicing the moving line, but particularly like this one here is not really coming out. And I think if we're hearing that throughout that, it's cool if you can just pop those a little bit more, maybe just get a little bit more on the right hand to grab them. This da-di-da-di-da-di-da-di-da-di-da. I think that the overall kind of arc of these bars would benefit from not sort of restarting quite as much there. It's kind of like you're doing a rallentando and then like an a tempo and then like another allegando. It's hard to know exactly how to shape that, but I think if the whole thing, like if this rallentando is a little bit like kind of fighting momentum, but there's still momentum going, and then finally it's at the allegando where it kind of wins out a little bit. But maybe there was something just sort of a little bit too a tempo-ish for my tastes right there. Let's see, going on. Yeah, actually, this is a good example of, we're at what does it say here? Like 108, 100, something like that. This tranquillo is 94. Like it's very slightly different, and I think that basically if you can keep that tranquil feeling that you had, but if you think of it more in kind of one to a bar, it allows it to move a little quicker, which then creates a better relationship of tempo between the things. Can you give a couple bars into that tranquillo?
Sure.
Great. This bit here, and each, when it comes back in the other kind of related variation as well, I think that the five figure is very, it's not just gestural, it's kind of motivic. I don't know what I feel like it's being played kind of as a ba-da-dum, instead of da-da-da-da-da-dum, da-da-da-da-da-dum, can't speak it, but you know what I mean? That there's a certain clarity to it that I think, if you can just think of playing it slightly more clearly and slightly more evenly, so that we really hear the enunciation of all the notes. And I wonder if maybe the break there, it gives away a little bit of, it's like, okay, like, okay, we know something's happening there. It's a little bit more like, oh, whoa, that's, I like the surprise of it.
Yeah.
You just take like the bar of the rallentando. Little thing here, as the motive gets condensed, I think that the eighth notes, those eighths, there, they need to retain the same character as, because it's basically, it's the same thing, it's just getting kind of compacted. And I think that right now they're sounding like different elements, so we're losing the connection kind of how the theme goes like that. Basically, I guess it's a lot of words to tell you to play them shorter. All those notes, that's not how it goes, but you know what I mean. Can you take right from 67? And again, like really, really diction. Oh, sorry, you know what? And then when you get to this bit, as much as we can hear the carryover of the clash of there and there. So like I heard very clearly scales, but I didn't hear the way that they were overlapping. So. You know what I mean? So yeah, 67 is great. Great, okay. So this, I think, is quite important that this is just a ritardando al the tempo, which is, again, not actually a huge difference. It's not as big a difference as we think. Da-da-dee, da-dee, da-dum, dee, da-dee, dum, so that it's not, if we can feel with as many of these variations as possible, like we've ended up there rather than we're starting something new. So I think that helps with that feeling of being episodic. The atmosphere you created was great, but I think it just meant that you had to sort of restart something there. Can you, well, maybe just take 2 bars before, so. Mm-hmm. Great. I was going to say here, it's a matter of taste. The way, for me, you have this this rumbling that is very consistent under you, and then when you are under this, you are the consistent. So I don't think, it doesn't make sense to me for the trill to be, you approach it in sort of a, kind of a melodic way of like. But I think that it's like a gesture. You play the row, they play the row. You play the row, they play the row. And so I think that, yeah, again, a lot of words to say I would play the trill kind of fast from the beginning, so you take over the shimmer from what they're doing. This was great. Yeah, and I think that was very calm, and it was distressingly quick, which I like. You know what I mean? Like that the music. How there's like that sort of fine line with music like this where it's so unbearably creepy, but if you cross a line, then it becomes like maudlin horror movie, and you don't want to do that. It's like there was something right now, the way you played it, that had this objectivity to it that was really effective, because it was like, oh, yikes. And it also, it allows you to get there to, quarter note equals 80, and then the raw, it all, I think, will work really nicely. This was good, this was good, this was good, this was good. I really don't need to say anything about that. Oh, yeah, one thing that I think is very, very intentional and somewhat unexpected is, you're at this this is quite a bit faster, than, and I think that that's okay. I think that's good, because I think that then it's important that, there's still motion through this, and then you have that, again, one of those rallentanto al, the tempo 1 here, which is more back to what we're expecting here, and then you immediately take it just a little bit off of that again. This bit here, I think that you're basically accompanying the line there, and there were certain things. It's always nice to see two people working together so well, and you were like totally right with him, but it felt to me like the cart in front of the horse, Like, I think that basically, particularly as these phrases wind down, these little poco rits, or whatever those notes are, that you need to go with that, and you kind of almost like turned a corner right there, like you sort of dee-da-dee-da-da-dum, which made sense for you, but I don't think made sense for the rest of it. So maybe, think of basically being like this kind of shimmering thing that goes above these orchestral lines. And then I think that there was, if you do that, if you become this sort of accompanimental thing to what is a very calm, slow-moving melody, then as you get into this where you really are sort of the driving factor, you've developed something that is more consistent, and it can just fade and fade and fade and fade and fade. And you create such a fantastically calm atmosphere. It's almost, there's something quite hypnotic about this passage, and then it just all kind of stops. And then I think this is all the more effective. Like, in a way, if this is a little bit too kind of interesting and in and out rhythmically, then we lose the drama of the contrast. This was really good. There was something around here. I'd actually just like to hear you play it again. Can you take from, say, bar 175? Is that a really awkward place to start?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry, 175.
I remember what it was. I think that the pont should be faster. Like, I think that it can be more nervous sounding, and you sort of were, going sort of like by half bar, or, in the middle. I think that if the whole thing is a little bit bum, 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 that it's all got this kind of tension to it, because this whole, this whole bit, the anticipation of that to finally get to the da-dum, ba-bum, bum. Can you take, same spot, 175. So what? How are you doing that last chord?
I wrote them. I wrote it.
Oh, okay. That's funny. I always played it like a 1-3-4, but I mean, it's an effect. Yeah, I think that I can see that you know what you're doing is you don't want to be too far up in the bow to then have to. But I think that there's something in the tremolo that I think you're maybe putting a little bit too much motion into it, or more work than you need to be doing. It's just, and you can just kind of cheat up as you do it. But if the actual distance you're traveling with each of the tremolo notes is just very small, I think it'll just get this tighter feel to it, which could be kind of fun. This here at the meno vivo, it's like barely meno vivo, and I think that it still should have this kind of, it's funny, it's something that in the piano reduction, it becomes something different musically than with the orchestra, because with the orchestra there's still so much happening in like celeste and like all this good stuff, and I think that there can still be some sort of forward tension to it. It's not quite as back in the saddle, maybe. That con colore there, I think, is important. Yeah, actually, why don't we hear that passage? Can you just maybe give the 2 bars into 94? Yeah. That was nice. This was beautiful, beautiful. This is kind of the same thing that we were talking about earlier. And then certainly here again, all those things as we were talking before. And I think that this is a spot where, again, the tempo differences are not huge, but I think that if you can particularly make sure that this one is a little bit quicker than you might think. Again, that sort of thing where it's a little creepier because it's not that slow. And then these next two take off just a little bit more off of that, and then that allows this to be really the one that sits. Because I think that too often when you hear it, in a way, it's like those differences, I think, have to be exaggerated because they do generally sort of just sound like this is a part that goes fast and then it goes slow and then it goes fast again and then it goes slow. And I think, exaggerating or at least being on the sort of outer edges of those will give just a little bit more of a contrast, more of a contour through the whole thing. These here, again, this is something that doesn't really apply when playing with piano, but it's like those have to be timed perfectly with the harp. And I think that, in a way, the fact that they are doubled with the harp means they are meant to have just a little more of that bell kind of thing. There's something kind of ping of each one of those, just ever so slightly. I wondered, for me, that comma was a little too long. Again, it was like... it was a little too comfortable, almost like you've gone to the edge of this precipice and you're like trying not to fall, but you do. That would, that's all fine. That's all fine. I want to hear a little bit of the cadenza. Quarter tones were great. Yeah, actually, just from 309. Great, that's a good place to stop. Beautiful. Sometimes, those things, a couple of times I was like, it's not quite as legato as maybe you could get it, just slightly more sort of through contact on some of them, and just making sure ultimate clarity that it's very smooth and very clear, that we can really hear everywhere that it's going. I mean, it's like 99.9% there, but I think there's like that one tiny bit of refinement that, that would just take it kind of to the next step. From about here onwards through to where we stopped, I felt like there would be an opportunity to keep your foot on the gas a little more. Like, I felt like it stopped and reset in a way that allowed the audience to stop and reset a little bit. It's funny, I always feel that way in the Sibelius Concerto Cadenza too, that people make it too easy to listen to by kind of rounding things off and starting again and closing. And there are times where it's like, the music, you've really got people, and don't let them go, because like that's your moment. You really. How's that? I can't remember any of these notes, but that it is all through it. And then I think that you can really, really grind them. Can you just play that? Yeah, it would just be a little more kind of la la, you know what I mean? Yeah, and you're still conscious of playing each individual note. Yeah, but da-da-dum, don't rush. Yeah, exactly. Like that's a sound. Who's ever heard that sound on a violin? It's awesome, right? You never get to hear that, but it's really neat. That's such a great effect, and one of those things like to kind of is like, yeah, that's cool, but it's much cooler to do something that no one's really ever heard before. So yeah, I think that throughout this you can just really kind of then when you get to that, it's like, this is. You want people when playing this piece to have many moments of feeling, because like I think that that's one of Bartok's greatest qualities, is how he just makes people really uncomfortable sometimes, and I think that you can do that in here. And similarly here, that it's never really stopping. That there's always sort of this grind that's going throughout it, all the way through to there. Can you just pick it up from the mezzo forte? And I think also it's like that it's a much more controlled statement than that. It is not double dot. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, bum ba dee dee da 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 dee 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 da 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 dum. Those voices, the canon there, I think is really important and needs to be kind of there's a term that is not coming to mind. Disciplined, I think, that to really pull off that canon, it needs to be disciplined and somewhat emotionally reticent. Yeah, you know, I think that when I was just kind of blasting through it, I was, you know, not playing most of the right notes and they're certainly not playing cleanly. And I think that I was, you know, trying to make the point that, yeah, there is this kind of intensity that's throughout it. I think that if you can also be incredibly precise about all of it, so, you know, that is sort of the next step, that it is very tightly wound, but also very tightly controlled. And as much as you can, think of how to say this, differentiating the voices. That they're, if you can make that sound like reactions to each other that are not actually the same person playing. They're two different people in sort of a quite intense conversation at that point. That I thought worked really well here. Like I really heard this da 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 da. That was, so that sort of thing, if you can think about that in those bars a little bit more. I think we need to get out of here actually, but I'm really enjoying talking through all of this. And yeah, and the end was terrific. I think, yeah, we talked about that a little bit. I think, you know, these can sort of snap as much as you can. Bump, 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 bump. You know, again, these kinds of, these very chords with real consonants on the front of them. And it'll be great. Yeah, well, I hope I'll hear you play the rest of it someday.
Great, thank you so much.
Thanks a lot. Bravo. Hey, thank you. Thank you. Thank you all for being here. Thanks for listening. Yeah, congratulations.